Hey everybody, welcome back to IMDb Filmmaker Commentary. I am your host, Hayward Crawford, back with another episode where we fandom wise TV movies deep dive on a movie via IMDb and all the trivia and kind of, film detail that we want to nerd out on. I'm joined by a good friend, Nick Conedera, who's a fellow filmmaker currently based out of Texas. I think original California native, right?
Yeah, born and
Yeah.
raised California boy.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. And so me and Nick have a long history. We actually used to work together. And I don't know right at the same time, but we came from a Cutco Vector, cut our teeth through that company as young college kids slinging knives. And then we had a chance to connect a few years later with a mutual friend, Hal Elrod of the famous book Miracle Morning. And then we just kind of kept in touch. I was doing my film thing out here, and he's doing his thing. So yeah, we just wanted to get together. And once again, I do these episodes. I do live streams Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. Not every week, but at the same time, I want to also bring in different guests. So we definitely wanted to bring Nick in, and this is pre-recorded, and we'll have this out for you guys on the YouTube. But yeah, Nick, if you want to go ahead and maybe just if you want to just say a little bit about yourself before we kind of dive into this movie we have here.
About myself?
Or just anything you want to add,
Well,
or maybe, or we can just go right into the movie, or tell us about the movie you selected. We can get right into it.
well, it might be cool for anybody listening to
Yeah.
know why are we qualified to talk about movies. And I think the reason that we're here is because we love movies. Not necessarily that we're necessarily qualified. However, I did get a film degree at Chapman University in Orange, California. I've been making films since I was a kid. It's the only thing I've ever wanted to do. I also got a master's in documentary storytelling from Goddard College, and just finished my third feature film, Independent.
Mhm.
And yeah, besides that, written a lot of screenplays, been a part of the writers group that Hayward started many years ago. I've been in it now for I think like 4 or 5 years, something like a long time. Still going strong.
Yeah.
Woo!
4 years later. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just love movies, love watching movies, love talking about movies, love making movies, love everything about movies.
Awesome. All right, well, that's what we're here to chop it up about. So we have Five Easy Pieces. This came out in 1970, starring the legendary actor, the one and only Jack Nicholson. This was a movie I admit I haven't heard of. I know Jack Nicholson's catalog ranges years back. I think one of his first breakout roles was Easy Rider with Peter Fonda, late '60s. And I know there were a lot of kind of like I wouldn't call them art house films, but just a lot of the sort of new Hollywood rough edges '70s wave, new wave that Jack Nicholson kind of came through. You think of that era, you think of Chinatown, you think of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. So I don't know. I guess it was I commit a film sin. I haven't heard or watched Five Easy Pieces. I feel like I kind of missed out on this gem. But yeah, go ahead, Nick, and just tell us a little about this film and why you wanted to select this one, and then we can kind of deep dive in on the IMDb page.
Yeah, well, I don't think you should feel bad if you haven't heard or seen this film. Um, it is from the 70s, which is not our generation. Although I think we should know more about it because it's, in my opinion, one of the best films I've ever seen. Um, and I learned about it. I mean, I've known about it for a really long time. I think from film school, but I'm writing a script that takes place in the 70s. So I've been rewatching a lot of 70s movies
Hmm.
just to get an understanding of like what that era was like and the way that people were thinking. Um, and it's a great film. Bob Rafelson, the director, he did things like what else did he do? Easy Rider,
Hmm.
uh, Stay Hungry, The Postman Always Rings Twice. Or no, I'm sorry, he did not do Easy Rider, but he did The Last Picture Show, um, The King of Marvin Gardens, a lot of great old 70s movies. And apparently this was autobiographical, at least somewhat,
To him.
for Bob Rafelson about what he was feeling at the time. Um, and yeah, I wanted to talk about it because I wanted to study it even more after I watched it twice in a row.
Okay, cool. So this is what we're gonna do. Once again, we got the IMDb page pulled up. We're gonna see how much we can get through as far as like the different details. We'll start by playing the trailer. Let me know if you can hear the sound okay. And let me see here. Let me share my screen again just to make sure I click share sound, optimize for video. All right, and then we're gonna watch the trailer real quick, and then let's see here. Oh, where'd you go? I can't see you, buddy.
I'm here.
Okay, I know where our boxes went. Mm. Okay, I'm gonna play the trailer. Let me know, Nick, if you can hear the sound. Okay.
Don't do that, Bob! Don't mix in! We got the right bomb! It's low! It's low!
You know, I'll go out with you, or I'll stay in with you, or I'll do anything that you like for me to do. If you will tell me that you love me.
Keep on telling me about the good life, Elton, because it makes me puke.
It's that service speedy pastime.
People are filthy. I think that's the biggest thing that's wrong with people.
Dirt isn't bad, it's filth. Filth is bad. That's what starts maggots and riots.
Oh, don't touch.
Daddy's very ill. Don't you think you should see him at least once?
Father and Herbert and I had a summit conference concerning you. They wanted to hire a detective to ferret you out, and I talked them out of it because I felt that whatever you were doing, you had a perfect right to do, no matter how nonsensical your ventures might be.
I move around a lot. Not because I'm looking for anything really, but because I'm getting away from things that get bad if I stay.
If a person has no respect for himself, no love of himself, his work, his friends, his family, or something, how can he expect love in return? Why should he ask for it?
Cut it out.
Why don't you just be good to me for a change?
Oh, there it is. All right, Nick, initial thoughts on the trailer. I remember, at least distinctly, what's the word I'm looking for? It kind of brought me back to kind of Robert Altman movies. That's probably the most exposure I had to a lot of 70s movies. I took a Robert Altman class in college. And I did watch the movie last night, as I promised. So I'm still kind of letting it, it's still marinating. But I just want to get your thoughts just on that trailer we just watched. You know, they seems like it gave away a lot. I mean, they didn't give away a whole lot, but they do give you a lot to kind of go off of. Seems like. Yeah. What do you think?
I think trailers from the 70s are weird.
Yeah, I agree.
They just play clips of the movie just to kind of get a sense of the flavor. You know, it's not like a modern trailer that we see that's like built for selling. Here's exactly what you're getting yourself into.
Like mystery,
Um,
intrigue. They kind of just sort of, we're gonna give you exactly what this movie is, so you kind of know going in. Okay.
yeah, I think their marketing back then was a little less advanced.
I hear
So that's my opinion of the shitty trailer that we just saw.
you. All right, so let me get us back here. All right, so back on the screen share. Um, Once again, director Bob Rafelson, like you mentioned, I kind of looked up his IMDb. He did a lot more producing. So he was a producer on The Postman Always Rings, Stay Hungry, just Jeff Bridges, Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, and like Sally Field. I had no idea that all three of them were in a movie together, like in '76. So that was cool. Kind of discover that. Yeah, so he's a producer in a lot of these '70s movies, but he did direct, obviously, Five Easy Pieces. So we got other video clips here. What I like to also do too is just kind of go through these photos. Great thing about IMDb is that you're able to, like, for those that may be new to IMDb who will be tuning in, you really don't get these sort of photos both like done during shooting and then also as premiere photos, and you can kind of just look through them and kind of just takes you back to the film. You know,
Wow, cool.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Sign up for IMDb today. You know, so for anybody that might be new, I mean, us as filmmakers, we know IMDb in and out. But you can see alternative posters. There's different behind the scenes photos you may not be able to get on Google. So it's a really cool kind of way to go back through the movie. So I guess Nick, I guess my next question would be, as we're kind of scrolling through the gallery here, is what are some unique things about Five Easy Pieces or Jack Nicholson's character that really speaks to you, and why this movie you feel is so important? You know.
Well, the reason why I liked it, there are many reasons. One of the things that I think we've been discovering in our writers group, when we read produced screenplays, is our favorite movies and our favorite screenplays are the ones that bend and break the rules that we've been taught in screenwriting, like in screenwriting classes and screenwriting books. And this one definitely did that, but it was still an incredible character study. It was less plot driven. It's a very simple plot. He's just basically, he hears that his father is sick and he needs to go back home to visit, to see his dad possibly one more time before his dad passes away. So it's a very simple plot, but that also starts much later in the screenplay. Like I would say that's really when the movie starts, but that doesn't start until like, like 50 minutes in, which would be considered the midpoint, I think. So great character. He's described as an upper class dropout. He's a former concert pianist, prodigy, who had a very promising future in piano, coming from a family of musicians who are very talented, very famous, and a very wealthy family. And he just basically ran away because he didn't like that life. And now he works on oil rigs doing blue collar type work with, lower and middle class people that are more fun to him. And that isn't like denying your family history, and also the wealth that comes with that is kind of an interesting, we don't see that a lot. It's very I think it's very honest and authentic. And it also begs the question, like, well, why did he do that? Why did he run away from this promising career as a concert pianist? and from a very wealthy family and lifestyle up in the Pacific Northwest in the San Juan Islands. And so I think one of the dramatic questions that's posed by possible audience members is that, why did he do this? And when he goes back home, we kind of reveal the situation of why he might have done that. So interesting character study. I think it's a really interesting commentary on what was going on at that time in the 70s and how all of these baby boomers, this is what I've been learning watching and studying the American culture in the late 1960s, early 70s. All of these baby boomers were searching for something. There was this disillusionment, is a word used a lot in these early 70s films. But the actual, like my dad, maybe your dad, Hayward, maybe some of our viewers' parents, during that time were searching for something because they felt that the current society that was created was not fulfilling. It was not enough. There was a big disconnect between what they were told it was supposed to be and what they were actually experiencing as citizens of this country, and as citizens of the world at that time. There's, Nixon, Watergate, Vietnam. There's a lot of stuff going on that was really like, why are we living in this time? Why is our government doing these things? Like consumerism. Why are we, working and having to buy all this stuff? The whole 9 to 5 mentality, getting a job. And there's a whole generation of kids who grew up, right after in the economic boom of post-World War II, that didn't really have a clear understanding of what life was about and where they were going and why they were there. And that's why they're searching, mostly through drugs like LSD. But a lot of people were searching through spirituality as well. That's why there was a big Buddhist movement at the time, the Hare Krishnas. There's a lot of like small little cults and religious alternative lifestyles and religious movements that these baby boomers really globbed onto because they felt that there was more to life than what was being offered. And that sort of separation or disillusionment can definitely be seen in this film, in a really beautiful way. And I think, again, going back to why I thought it was a good movie to discuss and why I enjoyed it is because it wasn't like a protagonist trying to get something, and there's an antagonist or antagonizing forces or obstacles in the way of him getting that, and he's got to defeat the bad guy to get the girl. Those are a lot of the points of the formula, so to speak, that we learn in the film industry. But this one was much more honest. It was much more like real life, and it was much more just delving into the psychology behind this character who's really hurting and trying to find his way in life, and seeing how he does that is pretty amazing. Also because Jack Nicholson is just incredible. It's hard not to. I mean, he was like on fire in the early 70s. He was in a lot of great movies. I think this is some of his best performances of his entire life. And he was like 33, I think, when this came out. So maybe he was 32 when they shot it. So those are some of the things I enjoyed about it.
Oh yeah, great. And to kind of stay on the point about like, different generations and whatnot, I just find it very interesting because it's kind of like what you mentioned, like there really is no potential antagonist we could point at. If anything, the antagonist is within Jack's character himself. I mean, it's kind of the wrestling of him maybe having some good, maybe turning a corner with a relationship, and he just finds a way to just blow it up. Also,
really good point.
Also, too, with like, once again, going back to the baby boomers, and I've kind of had, just some podcasts, things I'm listening to recently, we had to realize coming from the baby boomers, potentially your dad, our dad, other people around that age, their parents were part of the greatest generation, that fought in the war, ended the World War II. So one reoccurring theme among all generations is, like you said, that period of kind of, floating around, drifting, being lost. And of course, the 60s with the whole kind of hippie LSD movement, there was that. Also, too, I mean, when kind of Charlie Manson sort of came in there and sort of that, I feel like there's also like, not to get too conspiratorial, but there's this great book called Chaos: Charles Manson, the CIA, and the Secret History of the 60s by Dan Piepenbring and Tom O'Neill. So they make interesting case on how, once again, the government may have had a hand in Charles Manson murders, and they kind of use that as a way to full stop that whole hippie movement because it was anti-war. It was getting away with the military industrial complex agenda. So now they go from this 60s, free spirit, free love, and guess what? Now we're into the 70s, kind of figuring things out. And then as our baby boomer parents get older into their 40s, it goes from 70s sort of, figuring things out, rough new Hollywood, bad recession. Then we get into the 80s where capitalism starts, Wall Street, and make all the money you can. We see like a very surge uh, wave of capitalism, and our baby boomer parents. You can kind of say that was sort of, for many baby boomers, that was when they kind of was like, put on the suit and tie, let me go to work, do the 9 to 5, and let me just start getting the bag, if you will. So I think I just find it very interesting, that kind of dynamic. But we're seeing in the 70s, this is kind of that lost, drifty period. So that kind of, you mentioned that, it kind of reminded me of that. So let's get into my favorite portion of the IMDb show. Let's get into trivia. So once again, spoilers. If you guys haven't already seen Five Easy Pieces, I know I'm late to the party. I just watched it last night. You have 50 years to do so, but if you rather pause this video when we upload it and come back to it, we're gonna get into some spoilers, or trivia, if you will. But here we go, and kind of see what we may not know about this movie. All right, so Five Easy Pieces refers to a book of piano lessons for beginners. Okay, I had no idea. I did take some piano lessons as a kid. My sister did it for a little bit longer than I did. And I remember there was, that moment where he was with Catherine, and they were having their sort of, he was playing some music for her. Hey, it's just an easy piece. So I like that sort of, I'd like to at least get a little bit of like, okay, what's the title reference here? Okay. So that's interesting. The moment at the end of the diner scene where Bobby sweeps all the glasses off the table after arguing with the waitress was inspired by Jack Nicholson doing this himself once at a coffee shop called Poopy's Up on the Strip, when the manageress took his coffee away despite him only having just arrived, because the group of fellow actors he joined had been there for hours, and we're told to leave. Very interested. All right. Okay, Nick, if you want, you could read a couple of the next ones. And if anything, trivia, anything kind of pops out, so here's the next one right here.
The traffic jam. You want me to read it?
Yeah, you can just read it.
The traffic jam on the freeway was shot on a new and unopened section of Interstate 5 near Bakersfield, California.
Yeah, and I've actually been through, I'm sure, I don't know if you have, but I've been through Bakersfield a few times, so
yeah,
it's somewhat familiar. But hey, let's just talk about that scene right now. Iconic. It was in the trailer. They're in the middle of this traffic jam, and I guess some sort of Jack's character, some sort of act of rebellion, or like there's too much going on, I can't deal, or like maybe let me just, I don't know. Do you think was he kind of getting on that piano to play it to kind of just mock the angry drivers around him, or was he getting on there to think, hey, let me try and like maybe cheer them up with some music? I don't know. I feel like it was more
no,
so
that was
narcissistic. But what did you
yeah,
think?
that was definitely for him. I enjoyed that scene because it was so entertaining, and I felt like when in times in my life when I've been really bored or down or stuck or like nothing is happening, I gotta make something happen in order to get some, just to feel alive, in order to get some zest back out of life, because life is tough sometimes. um and so I feel like we have all experienced moments like that in our lives. And just to give a little context about the scene, you mentioned he jumps on the back, stuck in a traffic jam. He jumps on the back of the truck in front of them,
Right.
that's hauling some stuff, and he starts playing the piano that they're hauling. Right. Yeah. So give a little context. They were just fired from their jobs. They're drinking in the car while they're driving and getting upset and cursing at the man and, you know, their boss that fired them and how stupid he is. And then they get stuck in a traffic jam, which they don't normally. They, like, as oil rig workers, they get up super early and go to their job site.
Right.
So they're never in traffic. So this is like the first time they actually have to experience traffic like a normal 9 to 5er. And I think, you know, this character's rebellion, what's his name?
Oh,
Bobby. Bobby's rebellion against the way that society is trying to conform everybody into the same thing matches his rebellion to what he ran away from in his home life back in the Pacific Northwest. And it was just a really great, it's just a really great scene, and it's a really great image of just kind of giving us a glimpse into his inner psychology and who he is as a character. It's super fun. And then the truck drives away and he just keeps playing, and then he jumps off the truck, like, you know, like maybe 30 minutes later when they're driving.
At some point, I was waiting for him to, like, okay, he's just gonna let the truck whisk him away. Crazy.
Yeah, he like doesn't even care.
Right.
Doesn't even care where he's going.
Once again, he's drunk. He just got fired from his job. So once again, thanks for reiterating that. Because I guess I missed. I didn't miss the detail, but then I just forgot to bring that detail. Jack Nicholson wrote some of his own lines for the monologue "Bobby with his father." Wow, what do you think about that monologue? That last scene.
Yeah, it's incredible. So the way that so this monologue that they're referring to is the climactic monologue at the end of the scene. He's at the end of the film. He's finally gone back home. He's seen his father, who is basically a vegetable because he's had 2 strokes. So he's probably going to die soon. But he can't speak, you know, and he's trying to find some healing or connection with his father that you know, they obviously had a falling out previously, and they never really liked each other to begin with, according to what he says in the monologue. But he's trying to connect. He's trying to find some healing. He's trying to, he's trying to have some sort of relationship with his father that maybe he's never had. And maybe the whole movie is him trying to get approval from this imaginary father figure. But the monologue is really incredible, and the way that they shot it, there's a really interesting story behind it. So the scene is he wheels, it'd be great if we could just show this stuff, but he wheels his father
maybe look for it
out to this big field that they probably own, like somewhere on their property. And he has a private moment with his father where he's speaking to his father. He knows that his father's not going to respond because he can't, but he hopes that maybe his father will hear something that he's trying to say. And in the making of the movie, Jack Nicholson was very against crying. Like, he felt that this character would never cry. But Bob Rafelson being on the side of the audience, thought it was super important for the audience to see some emotion. We need to see this character emote at some time, and this monologue, this scene would be the perfect time to do that. Yeah, so this is the scene with him and his dad. And Jack Nicholson was just like really upset about having to do this apparently, and he just like ripped up the script and just like started writing his own like what he thought the character would say. And Bob Rafelson, the director, was like, do whatever you want, like the words don't matter, we just need to see the emotion. And so shooting this scene, Bob Rafelson, the director, sent all of the cast and crew away. So it was just Bob and Jack and the actor playing his father. And Bob Rafelson had the camera set up on a tripod, so we don't need a camera operator. Bob himself held the boom, but he turned away from Jack. So it was just him by himself and his thoughts and emotions. And Bob Rafelson held the boom over his shoulder, pointing at Jack. So nobody was watching him whatsoever in this scene. And Jack just did it one take. And then, when he was done, Bob was like, "Oh, are you done? Was that it?" And Jack got super upset because it was like, "You weren't even watching, you idiot. Like, this is stupid. Like fuck you. That's it. That's it. I'm not going to do it again. Whether you got it or not, I don't care."
Wow.
So kind of a difficult, they argued a lot apparently, but they could argue because they were on the same page creatively.
Yeah. Hey, that's
but sometimes scenes like that are really difficult to do. And, incredible actors like Jack are pretty choosy because they know what they're doing. And if their instinct says no to something, they're going to fight for it, or if their instinct says yes to something that the director doesn't want, they're going to fight for it. So it's an incredible scene. And there's a reason that he was nominated, for it.
Great point. I appreciate that sort of trivia with the boom, because I don't know if that's even on the IMDb page, but great we have these conversations, inside info you won't get anywhere else. And yeah, because every, the best actors of our time, whether it's method acting or other different strategies, I heard some a while back, like, because most people in real life, they don't just try and cry. Like, if anything, they try and fight back the tears. So, a lot of people just trying to just be like, "Oh, we need to cry in this scene." Like, no, well, a real human being, most of the time, they're trying to fight it back, or where they say one thing but they mean another. And just throughout this film, you can just really tell with Bobby, like, it makes more sense once we meet his family, that everything, every choice, every decision he's made, for whatever reason, it's like he doesn't want to obviously let anybody get too close. And like you mentioned, he's kind of like, he's still looking for that healing. He's kind of looking for that closure with his father, and then that just permeates in a lot of different ways, throughout the film. This way they treats different people, and it just kind of bubbles up, So yeah, great point there. All right, getting back to some of the trivia, because you never know what happened with just the making of films. It's a dance. It's organized chaos. So here's some more trivia we got.
Yeah.
Feel free, Nick, to comment on whatever. All right, cool. So Jack, you still okay? Jack, when Dupia goes to quit his oil rigging job, the loud whirring of machines can be heard in the background. The identical sound was used by George Lucas in the trash compactor scene in Star Wars. Interesting. All right, here's another one. Bobby is likely based, like you mentioned, in part on director Bob Rafelson. Rafelson's first draft of the screenplay before it was revised by Carol Eastman was described as autobiographical, and many of the clothes Nicholson wears in the film are Rafelson's own. Wow. Including a black turtleneck he owned since his college days at Dartmouth. Wow. Jack Nicholson wanted Janis Joplin to have the part of Palm Opadaka, but it was never offered to her. Very interesting choice. Now, the Janis Joplin, she did a little, didn't she do a couple small roles before she passed, right?
I don't know, but we can ask IMDb. This is the IMDb show.
This is true, and I got my IMDb on my app on my phone just as a backup. But yeah, very interesting. I feel like she was in maybe a couple small bit roles. Obviously, there's a lot of documentary footage of her. No, she never. Yeah, she has no acting credits outside of like a music video and Ed Sullivan.
Yeah. But it's not to say that she wouldn't have. She just died pretty early in her career.
Yeah.
She was, if you're not familiar to the audience, she died of an overdose, just like Jim Morrison, Jimi Hendrix, Nick Drake, Mama Cass from the Mamas and Papas. They all died very, very young at around 26, 27, mostly from drugs. These incredible musicians of that time, and they all died within the same 2-year span at the same age. It's pretty wild.
God, I'm sorry, my conspiratorial hat was going off. Like, man, now that you put it like that, because it's kind of like there was evidence that the government was trying to calm down this anti-war free love movement. Obviously, we got Charles Manson that did his thing that killed a lot of it. And then, like, once you bring that back up, like a lot of these influential artists that were speaking truth to power, anti-war, free love, experimental drugs, just to kind of see a lot of them go out. Like, it was like, yeah, that late 60s, early 70s time span kind of makes you wonder. I'm going to leave it at that. But
yeah,
a lot of too many coincidences, to at least not ask the question.
Yeah.
Because we did lose a lot of stretch, All right. In Carol Eastman's original script, Catherine Van Oost, played by Susan Inspach, was supposed to be an older woman, but director Bob Rafelson transformed her into a young beauty who was Carl's protege. So that was definitely an interesting dynamic with those two. And it kind of just, at least in my opinion, just goes down to like opposites attract. She knows she clearly has a thing, or maybe she gave off a choosing signal that Bobby saw, and then she's trying to fight. No, I didn't mean that. Or who do you think you are? I'm about to take my bath. Or, she's just saying one thing but means another. And like, they have a little hot and steamy moment. So what do you think that was
playing
like?
hard to get?
Yeah,
playing hard to get.
Played all the tricks. Bobby knows what's up. Like, okay, I know what you're really getting at. So what'd you think about that? Was an interesting sort of relationship dynamic. Obviously banging your brother's fiance. So what was your thoughts on that sort of storyline? Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because the whole movie, he's constantly denying and pushing away everybody that loves him.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually thought it was a really interesting, like if a psychologist or a psychiatrist watched this film, they would say this is a really incredible illustration of attachment theory, because there's really on a spectrum, there's really two styles of attachment in attachment theory, in relationships, how people attach to the people that they love based on their relationships to their parents. That's the theory. There on one end of the spectrum is avoidant. These are people who shut down and go away and need to be alone when there's conflict or high stakes, just when things get tough in a relationship. And then on the other side is anxious, which is the people who seek and try to come towards the other person to connect when things get difficult or when there's conflict in high stakes relationships. And Bobby is obviously an avoidant, because the character Rayette, his girlfriend that he lives with, is constantly pining for his attention. She's so sweet. She loves him so much. She's like always kissing him and giving him love, and he just doesn't want any of it. Just cold shoulder, stiff arm to her the entire film. There are moments when he opens up a little bit to her, but she is constantly getting her feelings hurt because he's an avoidant and she's an anxious. So he's constantly turning away, and he's constantly turning away, and she's constantly wanting more of his attention. She's constantly seeking him. But the whole film, he's doing that with everybody that loves him, even his sister. His sister is constantly saying, like, there's so many things I want to talk to you about. Like, when can we hang out? She's trying to like play ping pong with him, and he's constantly running away. But with this other character, this love interest, this affair that he has with this young woman who's staying at his family's property, he's seeking her, and she actually turns him down, which is a really interesting twist on, you know, like I keep saying, he's searching for something, you know, he's searching for something. He doesn't like what he already has. He's not appreciative and grateful. But the one person who has a very secure attachment style, she's very conscious. She's very healthy in her relationships. She sees, obviously, you're not a healthy person. You're kind of toxic. You don't, there's this great monologue that we saw in the trailer. Like, how can you ask for love if you don't love yourself? You don't love anybody. You know, everybody who loves you, you're pushing them away. How can I be with somebody like that? Like, I'm not going to be with you. I'm not going to have a relationship with you. And that's a very secure attachment style. She knows her own needs, and she knows that this person is not going to be healthy for her. So yeah, it was just a really interesting twist on, and it's also very realistic. That's what often happens in real life. Oftentimes relationships are forged between someone who's avoidant and someone who's anxious for whatever reason. That happens. Very common. That's very common. And then those two insecure people are often driven away by people who are very secure, because they're much more confident and they know that their needs. And that's really dysregulating for anxious and avoidant people. So yeah, it's just like, that's when I read the attachment style book, that it was very obvious. This is like a perfect illustration of that. And again, it just says a lot about his inner world and his psychology and how he's thinking. And it was so realistic, you know, first of all, the character, maybe to Bob Rafelson's life itself, but also to the times, what it was like in the early 70s, and that disillusionment that we talked about earlier.
Man, great point. You kind of hit the nail right on the head. People are complicated. They're not cut and dry, you know. And then, you know,
True.
the whole classic golden rule, opposites attract. You know, you get the anxious, needy person versus like the avoidant, and yeah, that sort of stuff. So relevant then and relevant now, 50 years later, you know, depending on who you talk to. All right, so this is the last few bits of trivia we're going to get into as we wrap up here. Once again, IMDb Filmmaker Commentary. We live stream regularly on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. Got my guest here, Nick Conedera, dropping in some nuggets on 5 easy pieces. So we're going to pop out the rest of this trivia, then wrap things up. So, 5 Easy Pieces features Karen Black's only Oscar-nominated performance for Best Supporting Actress, Rayette DePesto. She lost to Helen Hayes for Airport, and I think that was the other serious Airport, not like the spoof Airport. Black won the New York Film Critics Award and the National Board Review Award in the same category. National Board Review, however, gave the award to Lois Smith for her role as Garpita Dupia, in 5 Easy Pieces. Interesting. Okay, so we got a couple nods in the film, you know, awards in the film. Well, 1 award, yeah. No, 2. Yeah. So yeah, I thought that was interesting. Like I said, I was actually aware of Karen Black because I guess when I was in undergrad, Wayne State back in Detroit, I took a Robert Altman class, and he was kind of this vanguard sort of leader. He directed MASH, and he went on to do Long Goodbye, Nashville, a lot of these other sort of similar, like new wave sort of. He kind of bent against the grain with Hollywood, like the new wave Hollywood. Because even back then, a lot of people didn't really understand the film. But I think she was in. He did this. He did like a stage adaptation, a film adaptation of the stage play, like Come to the Five and Dime, Jimmy Dean, Jimmy Dean. And I'll admit, like, just being, being younger back then and not as like a film connoisseur, like it was a little bit of a hard watch because it was like a stage play movie, like shot in the 80s. So I was aware of her from that because she was in a couple of Robert Altman's films. Um, but yeah, so what did you think overall of I guess her performance? Obviously she played it really well. She got, Oscar nominated. Any thoughts on that, Nick?
She was incredible. I mean, she embodied that character so perfectly. Um, and even like uh her makeup, like she wore this lipstick. I don't know if that was her choice or makeup department or the director or whatever, but just she embodied that character perfectly. Just this really sweet, loving. She's always just given Bobby so much love, and she was so sweet. And she did not deserve the way she was treated at all in the film. But that's was kind of the point,
Yeah. All right. Early drafts of the script alluded to the death of Bobby's mother as a major catalyst for his wayward behavior and estrangement from his remaining family. In the movie, she isn't mentioned at all, and the reasons for Bobby's estrangement are vague. However, with Nicholson's free spirit before he visits and his frustration during, especially compared to his famous conventional lifestyle, it's fairly obviously why he didn't stick around. So yeah, that's interesting. What do you think was the story behind his mother? You get to guess, Nick.
She had to have died at some point. Um, I can't imagine that she ran away like Bobby did. But I did think it was interesting because when you're writing, you always want to have an understanding of the backstory for the audience. But as we can see in this film, like it didn't really matter. I never even thought about it when I was watching it because it was so good. But yeah, I have no idea where the mother was, and I didn't even think about it.
Yeah, the great mystery. And that's the thing. Sometimes movies are maybe that more powerful where it's kind of left to the imagination, and then the audience has to do a little bit of homework, or not really homework, but they got to come up with and draw their own conclusions. You know, as much as we kind of want the closure and all the questions answered. All right, Susan Ann Smith was screen tested for the part of Rayette, but won the part of Catherine after Carolyn Lindley withdrew. All right, interesting there. The piano piece played by Robert Dupuy, Jack Nicholson, while in the back of the truck driving on the freeway, is Frederick Chopin's Fantasy in F minor. For any piano enthusiasts familiar with that piece, Nick?
It's a pretty common piano piece, yeah.
I feel like if I hear it again, I'll like recognize it. I just don't. Kind of like
Yeah, I think most people know it.
Just like seeing a face over the name, I have to like hear the song over like the name of the song. I've probably heard it.
Yeah,
many times. All right, and then finally, as we wrap up here, I think is a great note to end this on. This film was selected for preservation in the National Film Registry by the Library of Congress in 2000. So that tells you all you need to know. This is one of the lauded greats when you get to that level of Library of Congress. That's a big deal. National Film Registry. So yeah, very interesting. Once again, it kind of took me back to the other 70s movies I watched before. And just seeing Jack Nicholson kind of like at his best. There's a handful of movies I love Jack Nicholson in. There's still a lot of movies I need to watch of his, because he's retired since like 2010, and he kind of just went off to the sunset. You got to respect it. I mean, he retired a few years after The Departed, you know. So I guess it was kind of like, you know, 3-time Oscar winner. You know, he kind of felt like, hey, I did all I could do. And now apparently he likes to just sit under the tree and read books from what I research on his retirement. So yeah, Nick, as we wrap up, IMDb filmmaker commentary, anything you like to add about Five Easy Pieces or just in general with this great gem of a film?
Well, it was nominated for everything: Best Picture, Best Director, Best Supporting Actor, or Best Supporting Actor and Best Actor. I think that's important to point out. I don't think it won any of those, but it's cool just to see that the film industry at the time recognized how good of a film it was. But also, I think it's still, like, when I watched it, it felt like a contemporary film. Like, it was that good. It was ahead of its time. And I think that just goes to show how that estrangement and disillusionment from what culture says is the way that life is supposed to be, still rings true today. You know, we've gone very recently with 2020, we've gone through our own sort of age of Aquarius experience with COVID and Trump, and like everybody waking up to the fact of like, whoa, the world just like is not as cool and as great as we thought it was. And when you start to realize that, it's very maturing, it's very humbling. And yeah, that's what happened in the 70s in a really big way with a whole generation. And so maybe that's why we're having sort of a resurgence of these 70s films and these 70s themes, because we're kind of going through that same thing today. But also, I think it's just kind of universally, and anybody can relate. I think we've all gone through that. If you have gone through your early 20s, I think that's what your early 20s is.
Yeah. A lot of discovery, screwing shit up, figuring it out, and stirring it up again. Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, I don't think I could top those words any better. I appreciate you, Nick, for coming on. You're welcome back anytime. We'll definitely maybe try and arrange something. If Tuesday, Thursday doesn't work for you, we'll do something, you know, be a reoccurring guest. I know you got a lot of other movies. I know you don't watch as much TV, but definitely movies, whatever you want to contribute towards that. And thank you guys, IMDb filmmaker commentary audience. We will be back later this week or next week and talk to you guys later. See ya. Peace.